Doug, let's get started. Before we go into specifics of sponsored products tech, let's talk a little bit about you. You were at a company called Vistaprint until 2012, and then you co-founded your company OfferLogic. What was the idea when OfferLogic was founded, and how did you get into retail media?
Yeah, great question. And again, thanks for having me on today, Andreas. I did found OfferLogic with my co-founder, Brian Seastead, back in 2012. Our original intent and observation was we came up with kind of a nifty little way to improve site monetization for retailers and SMB sites. We really focus on that small business market using our Vistaprint experience. And we sort of got that up and running. And then sort of, as you know, one of the best and worst things about running your own company is that once you start helping people solve problems, more problems are often identified and turn up. And fortunately for us, one of our large retail partners challenged us to help them with a sponsored products-like solution. And that's sort of a way we went, because as we sort of started studying the space in the sort of 2014-15 timeframe, watching Amazon move from product listing ads to sponsored products, watching those ads move up the page, it became really apparent to us at that time that, wow, this could be a really big opportunity for retailers. And I would say, I've always been super bullish on sponsored products, probably because, I'm a WashingtonPost.com alumni. And back then we used to talk about making a market, and every day the newspaper makes a market in news content or political content or automobile classified content. And we had to sell ads around that content to pay for all that expensive editorial. I see e-commerce sites through that sort of market making lens. All the products on site are for sale. So one could argue all the products on site are just ads, just some of them are monetized and some are not. Now if an ad is super relevant and highly targeted and useful, then it's great for the customer, it's great for the supplier, and it's great for the retailer.
And at some point, the market was getting somewhat traction, and it was roughly 3 years ago that you and a few of your OfferLogic colleagues moved over to Wayfair. Can you describe what your current role is and also provide some insights on what the journey in these last 3 years has looked like?
Wow, Andreas, you've been doing your homework. Indeed. So I'm the general manager of media at Wayfair, which simply means that I look after the team that builds some really great products and advertising products for our suppliers, right? Simply put. In terms of how we sort of got here in the evolution, let me just say that after pitching a bunch of retailers on sponsored products offerings back in 2016 and 17 timeframe, I learned that every IR 50 top retailing website is on their own journey to understand, when and how they might want to capitalize on retail monetization, and when they're going to make that investment. And from the outside of a startup, I couldn't force their hand. I couldn't make the light bulb go off in the executive suite. Conversely, now at Wayfair, I have this huge opportunity to swing for the fences with a super talented team from the inside with strong executive support. So it's really it's super fun to make happen. In terms of what we're up to, we built and launched Wayfair sponsored products, our first version of that in 2018. Subsequently, we've added additional capabilities, keyword targeting and lots of additional reporting and the like. This quarter, we launched Wayfair sponsored shops. So think headline search. These are our self-service performance marketing programs. These solutions are integral part of our sort of full funnel advertising offering for suppliers, which also includes on-site display, off-site retargeting, and a few supplier-funded co-marketing programs. So you can think catalog or social influencer campaigns. And my real focus is, to work hard to make sure we drive adoption and usage of the above. I will say, Andreas, like that white T-shirt's pretty impressive. I went to the closet and pulled this out. I got out of the T-shirt, so I'm super looking forward to getting off Google Meet and off Zoom to meet people live going forward. So that's an H2
goal. Put a T-shirt on again?
No, that's in about 45 minutes. But
all right. Look, Alibaba probably is the company that invented this whole retail media game to a great extent, and they have a massive monetization strength. And at some point, probably 7 years ago or something, Amazon went into this and also created their own monetization solution. And then surprising to me. It took the market like 5 years to recognize, oh, what are these guys doing there? And all of a sudden, and it happened like probably last year, everyone realized, oh, we also should probably do that. And then everyone hopped onto sponsored products, and this is now a quite substantial market. With these changes, do you feel that retail media sponsored products will be a core competency for most large multi-brand retailers?
Yeah, it's a great question, Andreas. I mean, certainly watching the market evolve has been fascinating. There were several of us, yourself included, who I think have been eyeing this space for a really long time and trying to get inside the heads of different retailers and try to promote this notion that, you know, suppliers are key stakeholders in the equation. They want to stand out on site, just like they pay for end caps in store. Why don't we use some digital inventory? You know, I think that's, you know, an agenda a few of us have been pushing for a long time. It's not surprising to me that more folks recognize now how you can have your cake and eat it too, with respect to, you know, delivering relevant user experiences with products that are paid placements, particularly when you're in an environment where substitutions are high, or brand understanding is rich, so that substitutes again play well. I think with respect to the core competency question, you know, I think, you know, you kind of have to ask yourself, you know, first, if it's like more philosophically, and it's for the executive team, you know, and I mean, is the whole team behind building a big business here? It's easy to serialize and focus on like, oh, we got to get the product team right, we got to get the engineering right, but it's equally important, almost more important, that the merchant and category orgs view this as something strategic that we're going to be good at. You know, your site experience folks need to be your partners, you know, coming to you with ideas about how places that you could monetize, you know, as part of their everyday. You know, the data science team, you know, often super protective of algorithms that drive the organic rankings and the like, need to recognize that, hey, if I play nice with the paid folks, we can actually control, we can optimize for a great user experience and outcome, and make a little bit more money doing it, while also providing the supplier that differentiated placement value. You know, next, I'd sort of ask, you know, is retail monetization going to be part of your core business going forward in the next 3 years, 5 years, 10 years? You know, to your point, I think the genie is a bit out of the bottle. So do you want to own the muscle you build, or do you want to, you know, partner to get it? I think those are questions you have to ask. Do you have the product and technical expertise and capabilities to solve? I tend to think folks underrate the necessary expertise. You know, do you want to get it mostly right in the first go, or do you want to dabble in it and watch kind of 3 years go by as you learn about what I think is a fairly solved problem space, like if you've, you know, by certain folks? So I look at it that way.
We now see a few companies who own the tech stack, including Wayfair, where you currently work. We also saw Zalando in Europe, massive success, build a whole platform business. We see Walmart going down that path. As you observe the market, do you believe that going forward, more and more companies will try to own the entirety of this? Or is it just good enough to use third parties and try to leverage what's out there?
Yeah, I think it's back to that individual company thing and some of the rationale that I laid out on whether or not you believe this is a core competency or not. You know, the answer to those questions sort of above would sort of belie the answer for individual folks. I think it's circumstance based. You know, do I think there's room in the market for SaaS providers with retail monetization? Absolutely. You know, if monetization isn't viewed as core and strategic, or the org doesn't have the tech expertise or experience to go it alone, or they have other higher value investments they want to go make and they want to get started here quickly, like absolutely, I think those solutions can make a ton of sense.
Let's take a quick look, and I'm putting a few slides on at what we observed in the market. And this is the Amazon's monetization performance over time. And we see it started all very, very small percentage of the overall revenue came through media actually. And then we see a drastic change. So in 2017, where this whole thing started to really kick off and gain traction. In 2020, based on the numbers, we can see a 4.1% of the overall Amazon revenue came through monetization. And this is kind of almost pure EBITDA, which is going through. So it's remarkable to see how much traction this got. And then if we take a look at the companies who, and you see this quadrant here now, it's tech in-house, tech outsourced, services in-house. And there are a few leaders in the market who own this in the entirety. We mentioned Amazon, you guys, Walmart, but also smaller companies like delivery.com have built their own tech stack. So we clearly see that the companies who lead that game seem to have a kind of more ownership, while we observe that the whole rest of the market is having a rather Me Too approach. We want to run this somehow, but let's keep it light. So sales is oftentimes outsourced, and ad ops is outsourced, and the tech stack is outsourced. And we did a little exercise here, which is based on, let's say, common knowledge in the market, what we observe from the top 10 US-based retailer. That's an estimate. We believe it's between 0.2 and 0.7% of the overall revenues which come through monetization today, all done with third parties. And then we took a look at Walmart. They were roughly below a single percent before they moved things in-house. And since then, they made a huge jump. And today they are 2.7%. And then Amazon being in-house for quite a while, it's at 4.1%. Do these numbers surprise you, or have you seen similar dynamics at Wayfair? Because from what I know, there was a third-party product being implemented before, and since then you've taken things under full control and developed them in-house. So does this picture surprise you?
Yeah, absolutely not, Andreas. I mean, I think that picture speaks volumes, but I think it's, I mean, we're talking about very capable, large retailers that, you know, when a focus is applied to solve a problem, right, I think folks can make real traction against it. And it kind of gets back to that alignment, you know, thought around, you know, organizational alignment. If you say we want to go do something and you go do it and do it well, then I think you can really kind of, you know, achieve great things. And it's not surprising that Walmart is on Amazon's heels. You know, that's my thought.
I mean, let's compare this, put this into perspective. There's an Amazon out there with a monetization strength, which is between 6 and 20 times better than from the other players. I think it's kind of clear that it's also a very unique company, being in a unique position because they have so much market power, and it's easy to run a private markets approach. Everyone just has to be there. But there seems to be something else. From your experience, why is an off-the-shelf product eventually not enough? Or where would you see limitations? Compare this with the situation you guys had, and you built something tailor-made for Wayfair. What are the reasons this delivers a better outcome?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And again, with that focus and the organizational complexity that probably exists in large e-commerce companies, you know, I think there's plenty of advantages to saying, hey, we want this to be something we're good at. You know, at Wayfair, our founders are in this business for the long game. And anybody who's followed the Wayfair story should know these guys are amazingly and passionate about, you know, making home great. And, you know, I think when the decision was made to have great advertising products, you know, I think that's the same decision that's made around having great merchandising and having outstanding marketing. We're just going to be really good at this, right? And so beyond not loving sort of like renting solutions, you know, the practical reasons to kind of roll your own, if you will, you know, the biggest one I think is control, right? And so control of, you know, when and how and where ads turn up, so the site experience. Lots of flexibility to go incredibly native or do innovative things there. Control of the algorithm and attribution and measurement systems. Control of the site speed and latency. You know, the marketplace information. When it's yours, it's yours. You don't have to dig for it. and control the supplier experience. You know, at Wayfair, we view suppliers as our partners, and we really want to make it easy for them. And we address a wide range of supplier partners in terms of sophistication. Some are super new to marketing at all. They just sort of think of, you know, companies that don't have big marketing departments, always sell through retailers and other channels. They're not particularly comfortable with marketing, much less performance marketing, and then all the way up to, you know, established brands who have sophisticated teams and agencies. And so it's really, you know, the control to build out a solution set that works for all of our stakeholders. Yeah, so there.
And how do you cater to these different requirements from a very large brand spending whatever 100K per week on your platform, probably having professionals handling all this, versus a smaller supplier not being very knowledgeable? How did you approach this?
Yeah, no, it's a fun problem to solve, right? Because for the super expert class, we need to develop expert tools and systems, you know, API access to information, et cetera, ability to plug in third-party agencies, et cetera, to allow folks to really optimize their experience as sophisticated suppliers. But I equally enjoy the challenge of meeting with and talking to suppliers who are much less sophisticated. And I take that on more as a product dev challenge to say, okay, how do we make our solution as simple as possible, as easy as possible, so easy my mom can do it, right? So, you know, we've got some neat things in the hopper, can't talk about them, of course, but some neat things and neat ways to approach that problem to really make it simple for folks.
Doug, can you outline what your current setup is? I mean, ultimately, you need to sell this. Of course, it's a self-serve solution, so there might be some demand, but there must be someone taking care of sales. First thing. Second, someone has to sit in front of the tool, do ad ops, for example, and then whatever, reporting, data analysis. How are you set up to run this whole program, which grew very big from what I heard from you?
Yeah, so I would say, you know, I think you need to meet the customer where they are, and you need to organize your resources and marshal your team and make your product investments so that you meet them where they are. You know, these products are self-service, right? So it is, you know, we went from, well, put it this way, thousands of customers use our product in a self-service, autonomous manner without interacting with our teams. But it's important to also create safety nets to make sure that you can, you know, onboard those customers, help them optimize, and help them be successful with your program. You know, in terms of, you know, broadly speaking, you know, staffing at Wayfair, the media, you know, org that I run, you know, it's super fun because it's like a mini company within inside a really large company. We have a dedicated product team, dedicated engineering team, dedicated sales team, dedicated account managers, dedicated analytics folks, operations folks, and product marketing folks. So, you know, we get to run like a mini company inside a very large company. But again, the thing that the glue that's pulled it all together from my perspective is really the cross-functional leaders that I interface with. Because I feel like, you know, cross-functionally, we're all pulling on the same oar. And I think that's a really key point. You can't do this on an island. It needs to be part of, you know, who you are, of your identity, in my opinion.
Let's talk a little bit about the relevancy aspect. And before I get to my question, let me reflect a little bit what I'm hearing from lots of larger retailers. So my impression is that in the early days, when this whole thing was invented, everyone wanted to hop onto the bandwagon, and what they did is, oh yeah, we create some ad swim lanes and we just paste ads in there, and then everyone was happy to see the revenue coming in. And some of the companies who own their tech and are quite sophisticated, we had them on a conference, and what we heard from them was, yeah, but we're getting very careful because we've started running split tests where we test sponsor products plus organic, so retail margin and media money you make, versus not showing any sponsor products. And what they had realized is that some money they thought they would have in their pockets was leaking because the conversion rate suffered a tiny little bit. So reason is clear. You populate your top inventory with ads, which eventually are not that relevant. And then you harm yourself in a very silent way without necessarily noticing this. What have you done at Wayfair to tackle this problem?
I mean, I think what you highlighted is a best practice, right? Probably shouldn't do anything to your website without sort of nurturing it and testing it, right? And kind of know the impact of what you're doing, right? And I think that's like super important, kind of table stakes. I think, you know, these slots in my view are sort of earned, right? The ad slots are earned by relevancy, right? So if you can be accretive to the customer experience, or at least neutral to the customer experience, because you're bringing something of value, then I think it's it makes sense. I think it's pretty publicly obvious on the Wayfair site that like in certain classes we have a very large paid footprint, and in other classes we have a smaller paid footprint, right? And that's really deliberate decisions to say at Wayfair we're optimizing for the customer experience. And we want to be very careful about what we show our ads to make sure to show our customers to make sure all our ads are relevant and helpful. And I think, developing systems, tools, processes that enable you to do that well, makes a ton of sense. So I'm not surprised relevancy is top on folks' mind.
So you mentioned that you are kind of a company within a larger company. Does this also mean, as you're building your own tech stack, that the whole relevancy scoring you do on your end with the sponsored products piece, is this disconnected entirely from what you do on the organic side? Because in both instances, you need to score products for relevancy, right? A query coming in and you need to decide organically, what do you rank and paid? Is there any connection between the two, or is it completely separate?
Yeah, Andreas, I'm not going to answer in the specific, I'll answer in the abstract, right? I mean, if you assume you're in it for the long game, and if you assume that your advertising programs are as core as your merchandising and site display and data science and algorithm programs, then I think the answer is fairly obvious that it's through collaboration with each of those functions that you're actually going to gain the outcome you desire.
I won't dig deeper, respecting what you can say and whatnot. Let's shift gears a little bit. Let's take a look at supplier vendor side. You know what product you've been working with before you launched. You know your product you have today. What are the key differentiators? What was it that made the major impact if you compare your monetization strength today, which is on a different level than a couple of years ago? Why? From a product perspective, supplier perspective, they must be feel more comfortable to invest right now, or draw a higher value out of their marketing investments.
Andreas, I think anybody who's been part of the digital media ad tech ecosystem, for a long time will know that, even before digital media, what was that old famous saying that which 50% of my ad spend is wasted? I know what 50% is, I just don't know which 50%, right? And I think, one of the most exciting things that we're doing at Wayfair is, the products that we've launched since 2018 are really performance marketing products, right? And I think the whole world, the pendulum's shifted. I think everybody starts as a performance marketer now, and then they perhaps moves, in my world anyway, and then moves back to maybe more brand marketing. But in my world, it's around performance marketing. So the biggest difference is our products are really good at demonstrating, what happened, what the efficacy of the channel is, and what the performance yielded based on the investment was. It's not spend, it's investment, right? Suppliers, I think, will always, they're the ones who determine the value, of a channel, right? And they determine the value of that channel by its efficacy. And so from our perspective, our marketing channels have to outperform all the other choices they have. I'd say it's still early days at Wayfair though, right? And our suppliers are getting a great value, and we expect that to change as kind of demand increases.
Okay, I guess that's a combination of targeting possibilities plus reporting you offer. Got it. Let me see. If you take a look at the evolution from small to a very big player in the retail media game, what were the milestones, you would say? What were the key things which actually drove that growth over time? Because it seemed to have picked up rather slowly, and at some point you got through it. Is it orchestrating the whole thing? Are there certain aspects which you would point out made the difference?
That's a good question. I like any endeavor, right? You have to get an awful lot right all the time, right? Meaning like, used to say that if you get like the product like 90% right, and you get the sales and go to market 90% right, and you get, I don't know, pick another attribute, the reporting 90% right, so that impacts retention. Well, that's 0.9 times 0.9, so that's 0.81. So you're 81% right. And then, you're dropping, further down, so you're roughly right. So I think paying attention to the details along the way in each of the areas that your solution requires is how you increase your odds of success and increase the probability of success. For us, I mean, I think secularly, I think we all are watching what is that tailwind in retail media and retail monetization. As you said, a year ago, everybody's like, sort of wants this now. They've realized that it's really high dollar return. And I think they've realized that as a business, if I'm choosing where am I going to deploy resources, well, what's the return on those resources? Well, oh, who knows? Site monetization is a pretty good place to do that. I think we're seeing more of that in the industry. But I'm not sure it's any one thing that shifted the tide for us at Wayfair. I think it's really just around, waking up every day, paying attention to the details, engaging cross-org, making sure your suppliers are having a good experience, because if they're not going to come back and invest with you anymore. So, it's just a broad combination of stuff that I think any business has to get right.
If you have the option to license, so it means use a SaaS product, acquire a company, or build it from scratch, how would you, what would your decision-making process look like? And what are the pros and cons of each of these approaches?
Yeah, it's a pretty heady question to answer on a webinar. I feel like I want to like write stuff down for you, Andreas, but, I think, you have to consider your operating environment. Who are you? What are you trying to accomplish? How important or unimportant this is. We talked about whether it's core or not. I think that will influence some of your pros and cons arguments. I think, you without any experience, you may want a quick start, and no faster start than getting a SaaS player involved and saying, hey, let's go figure out what we don't know, and that'll inform some of our decision making. I think that's a very wise thing to do. And in fact, that Wayfair did that before I even joined. They'd worked with one of the third-party solution providers, and so then it's probably around commitment and saying, hey, if this is what we want to own, then let's go ahead and invest in it, invest behind it. And then if that's the case, you got to ask yourself, like, okay, how do I want to invest behind it? How do I shorten my time to market? And how do I increase my odds of success? And that's where I think, like, if that's the culture that you work in and that's what you want to go do and have an impact quickly, then I think kind of like looking at maybe, licensing a platform and developing on it, or buying a platform and developing on it, or buying a team and having them come and help you. I think those are all accelerants to building out your strategy. I just think it's like, the fewer mistakes you make along the way, the more you can, particularly if they're known mistakes in a problem space that has some experts, then the better off you are long term.
Maybe a quick indication from out of gut feeling, time to market. If you start building this from scratch, without previous knowledge, you just get into it and you build it versus you buy components. Which one is would take how long with a full commitment?
Yeah,
But
now I'm completely off the reservation now, and now I'm completely speculating and not speaking for Wayfair by any means. You know, I mean, I think it's just it depends what team you get, right? So if you have a team of people who are really knowledgeable about ad tech and high availability systems and things that can make decisions fast, considerate of lots of data, and need algorithms, then you know if that team's equipped and they have knowledge of the space and they kind of have a general sense of what they're doing, where they're going. Knowledge of the customer, what their needs are, and how easy you need to make it. I don't know. It's still. I think if you just said, "Here's that team today, Doug, go do it," I think it's probably still a year, right? Even to get something up, probably shorter if you're really fast. But if you're in a really big company with lots of bureaucracy, it could be many years. I don't know. If you have a blueprint or like the architectural plans for exactly how to go do this business. I think you'd mentioned something like that you all are working on. Like, then I think you could probably cut a bunch of time out, right? So that's kind of my thought on that.
Let's assume some company sites we're gonna build this thing in house. What are your recommendations? What are common pitfalls? What setup is necessary in order for this to actually work in the end and not be an initiative which ends up in a disaster? From an organizational point of view.
No. I'm just gonna, the advice that I would give here, Andreas, is recognize the cross-functional implications of what you're trying to achieve, right? I think, and I said it earlier that it was the cross-functional leads and everybody pulling the same oar that was important, right? It's super important because if you think about it, retail monetization, site monetization, we're not on a web page. We don't own a web page. We don't own we don't really own anything. We work with the storefront team to be on the site. We work with the algorithms team to have algorithms. We work with the category team to have category management. We work with the analytics team to get good analytics. And like a construction project, where's the long pole in the tent? Like if we can't cycle quickly to build the muscle we need in each of those areas, then the whole project gets slowed down, right? And so I think an awful lot of complexity there that needs to be sorted.
Guys, if I can jump in, I hope you don't mind interrupting, but we received a slew of questions. I thought it might be a good time to jump in with questions now.
Let's do this. I was just about to suggest exactly the same.
Perfect. Great minds and all of that. So we got a bunch of questions in already. If you don't mind, folks who are listening, now's a great time to add some additional ones. I think we'll have enough time to get through most, if not all of them. So let's just go in a little bit out of order here. Real basic one to get us kicked off. Sponsored products and on-site display have become the basics of retail media. What are some of the newer retail media products that both you guys are excited about, and which do you believe have the most growth potential?
Doug, want to go first?
Sure, I'll take a crack. I mean, it's exciting because I think, all that we've been talking about, Andreas, in my view, and sort of what my point of view at Wayfair has been, like, never woke up in the morning and said, I want to copy those folks. Always woke up in the morning and said, I want to fast follow. I want to take the important bits that are standard and get those in and make it work. And then I want to figure out, how do we make this even better, right? And I think, if you look into the retail, the expansion between sponsored products and on-site display, there are a whole host of other marketing channels that, large companies, say like Wayfair, do to go to market to sell, to attract customers. And it's sort of interesting to think about, like, okay, so which one of those are right for supplier marketing and co-funding? So, we've done some fun tests with social influencers. That's a really interesting category. Social influencer campaigns. I think that's really interesting. And then, I'd say use your imagination and look around, but maybe you have some other thoughts.
So first of all, I think that on-site will be king. We see the whole privacy, browser limitations, GDPR, and so on. So everything Display retargeting has been a large chunk of this. It's going to get really difficult, in my opinion. And then offsite, it's where the traffic lives. I mean, there's a Facebook product designed for co-op, which of course there's a lot of traffic out there. And this is something where you can target properly. I think this is going to work. I feel on the on-site portion, especially on the sponsored products, I believe that in a couple of years, let's say 5, there will be way more inventory real estate being monetized. And I get the sense that there will be a time where every single product has some blend of sponsoring in there. We see eBay doing something similar already. They call that floating ads, where they connect organic with paid and just can monetize way more than they can monetize today. So I think these are some of the trends I'm currently seeing.
Let's go to the next question then. I'll read this one verbatim. With the retail media industry growing, what areas of, I'm going to guess the brand's ad budgets are advertisers pulling from to allocate to retail media channels? Or are ad budgets simply growing overall and retail media capturing that growth?
Doug, want to go first?
Andy, why don't you go first this time? We'll just mix it up.
I mean, first of all, we don't want to have this left pocket, right pocket thing. So what is not good is if you take the same co-op budget you got before and you pull it from one end to another end. So ideally, you want to access media budgets. And why can you now access media budgets? Because there are lots of brands, especially the CPG ones, who are desperately looking for more a direct relationship with their consumers. So influence what is being displayed. And they have a huge desire to kind of get closer. And what we see with the whole marketplace development, there's a somewhat better connection between end consumer and suppliers selling through marketplaces or retailers.
Yeah, nice, Andreas. And I just add, I think, like I mentioned, we have to compete on efficacy, channel efficacy. So if we are a more effective investment, if buying a sponsored ad on Wayfair is a better use of $1, say in the mattresses class, than spending $2 on a click on Google, then I feel like we're probably winning budget from other places. I think, in terms of budget growing overall, suppliers, look, everybody's stretched pretty thin and everything's fairly tight, at least in the world the industry I work in. And, I think it's, people need to spend, within the constraints of their expected return, and invest that way.
Let's add something to this. Most consumer brands, they have a DTC presence. Some of them have a very strong one. That's the Nikes and Adidas and these guys. And they can definitely convert traffic on their own sites. And that's why they have a tendency to cut off channel partners. But if you're Procter & Gamble, there's just not much going on selling one of these products through your own site. So you have to go through the marketplaces. And there, the only possibility you have is to get in touch with the end consumer is playing this retail media game. I do sense, however, that also these guys are getting much, much smarter. So the game has changed quite drastically. If I look 5 years back, there were companies selling banners like, oh, look, this is my homepage. You can have a banner for the next 2 weeks, and this is the price. So if you calculated this and compared it to what they paid on a per impression basis with Facebook and Google, it was like 20x more expensive, but it looked great. And I think as this game is becoming bigger now, there will be also smart advertisers being way more careful how they invest their dollars, run incrementality tests. So I think there will be quite a challenge also on the retailer side. What is performance? How do I measure that? And I think it's going to be interesting to see the kind of power equilibrium between retailer and big brand and how they play this.
Hey, Doug, I have a question specific for you coming in, even though obviously, Andy, if you have an opinion, we'd love to hear it. Do you think there's a limit to external demand sources, or should it be kind of viewed as unlimited? Does Wayfair have concerns about how Wayfair media might be sold by those external demand sources?
Let me digest that for a second.
I think what they're talking about is if Wayfair media is going to be available, whether through a DSP partner or through some sort of other external programmatic channel.
Yeah, I think, I mean, and I see there was another question in here around whether or not Wayfair sells remnant inventory programmatically to non-endemic advertisers, right? Why or why not? And I'll answer the second question first and then loop back to the first one. We made a decision this year to stop selling remnant inventory programmatically to non-endemic advertisers, in the majority of our cases. And so we sort of unplugged our AdSense and let our programmatic display. I think we saw enough growth in the core business with suppliers, and then also, finally kind of acknowledged that, we felt that those ads sort of cluttered the page and the like and leaked off the site, and there's good enough reason, not enough value there to keep them. And so we wanted to, figure out how to get innovative and recircle that traffic, using our own ad products back into the site. And so, since our focus has become much more, to our supplier base and not to the non-endemic world, when I think of external demand sources, I'm not, I think more of our direct relationship with our suppliers more than I do sort of like a DSP or other folks who might want to buy the Wayfair audience. I mean, the Wayfair audience isn't something that's like readily available for sale, and I don't expect it to be. It's not something that we've decided to monetize. So in our monetization strategy, we haven't said, hey, we're going to take the data and go out and monetize it. It's just not in our long-term interest.
Andy, I'm going to direct one specifically to you, actually. So Crealytics has been starting to offer a full buyout option to retailers, and it kind of opens up the interesting question of, should retailers be thinking about things from a build or from a buy or from a rent perspective? And I was curious how you saw the market in that regard. What are some of the benefits for going with that approach, and why did Crealytics shift its vision towards that?
I mean, what we specifically offer is first a service approach or using a SaaS product, but give the opportunity, the option to buy the tech stack. And I don't think we can generalize here. There are some companies who just want to make some quick buck, run some retail media, look into this, and then it's not worth investing that much money. But we see some others who are really, really ambitious, and then we get all the requirements, and we see how specific these requirements are and how tightly we would integrate. And then we took a look at the ones who are fully in-house, and we just see that and I showed this slide, they're just much, much stronger in how they can monetize their sites. And we realized that this isn't anything we could deliver with a fully outsourced solution, which isn't tailored to their specific needs. So I don't think the rationale is mostly saving the third-party providers' fees. That's, I don't know, 15-20% you would save. The big difference comes from whether you monetize whatever, you get 50 million out of this or 500 million. So can you really scale this to a greater extent? And that's probably the question. And I feel that going forward, it's not just a nice add-on. What I sense is that, I mean, let's take a look at Amazon. They make 20 billion out of this. If you sell through Amazon, your calculation is you sell the product for 90, 30 is cost of goods sold. You have to pay to manufacture the product. 30 is commission and whatever retail media thing on Amazon, and you should keep a margin of 30%. So what happens over time is you're forced into that game, and you at some point have to reflect this media cost in your prices as well. Means that the ones who don't really do this and master it, they will fall through the cracks at some point. So my hypothesis is that going forward, everyone will be forced into that game. And if you want to pay in the Premier League, then you should probably own that stuff. And that's the only reason why we offer these different models.
Great. I'm going to ask one question then for both of you, but from a different perspective for each one. So Doug, from your perspective, more client facing, and Andy, how you perceive it from more of a vendor orientation. What's the change management process like within the company to try to start to get executive buy-in for this sort of thing? So Doug, I know you've been an entrepreneur and you've kind of controlled this process a little bit yourself, but how do you start to get everybody moving in the same direction? How do you get the executives to really start focusing on the right things? And how can you really start getting your team to accept that this is a process and an approach that you should be adopting as a retailer?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think it's going to it varies substantially by organization. Some organizations are sort of like super leader led. Some are sort of like, highly, cross-functional. Some are, independent departments. Some get along smashingly well together. Some, don't work cross-functionally well together. I think there's just like, it's a real challenge. I mean, I think, I'll tell you a quick funny story because I thought this was really funny. When I was pitching those large retailers back in the 16, 17 timeframe, I had a slide. And on that slide, I said, by the way, retail monetization should be X percentage of your business, right? And so be careful what you ask for, because literally, like, now that I work for Wayfair, there's a slide at the top of the deck that says the retail business needs to be X% of our total business. And so you kind of get what you ask for in that respect. But, I think, that executive alignment, I just think, it's a choice. We've talked about how complex these businesses are to run, right? We talked about all the different touch points within a business that have to go well to deliver something. And, increasing your odds of success would mean like making sure that at every touch point, there's a lot of support to go. And Andreas, I did appreciate what you said around like, do you quick start with a platform? You have a SaaS offering, dig into it, because the reality is all those are choices, right? Like the optimizations that make this complex. So let's just take a simple one. Let's just take out of stock, right? And I think it's probably already solved by most of the big platforms now, but it wasn't a couple of years ago, right? So the idea was that, a supplier bids on a keyword for a product and the supplier wasn't inventory aware and they didn't know the thing was out of stock, right? So like that, and then the supplier would spend money and be like, how did I spend money on this SKU when it was already out of stock? And then, back and forth, though that problem might be solved today, that specific one, that's just like the tip of the iceberg. That problem exists over and over again, whether it's in getting the ads to appear on site or whether it's, attribution and accounting form or there's, you have bright ideas about how I'm going to use my inventory position. Let's pretend my ad system's inventory position aware. And let's use that in our model, right? Like, geez, that'd be kind of cool, right? And those are the kind of details that you're going to get into when you run a platform, but you're not going to see on the surface when it just looks like, oh, I just want retail monetization business.
So, in my opinion, I can just give you a best practice. Some of the European leaders who build a platform business, what they did, it was at some point a strategic decision. We are a retailer today, but in a few years, we want to run a platform business with an advertising ecosystem, cloud services, and everything else which belongs to a platform business. And then they just approached it from the very beginning. We know that they had acquired or they had hired people and sent people to Alibaba to understand in detail what they are doing. Then they built a whole media group, I think with 150 people within a few months. They bought technology. So it was a strategic priority to get this done with everything you can imagine. They put a lot of money against this compared to some others who now realize, oh yeah, there's this retail media thing. Maybe we should try if we find some SaaS product which we can run, and maybe we can also hire a sales guy. This is not going to work. So I feel it must be part of the overall strategy. Otherwise, these companies are going to stay at this 9% of the overall revenue. And this other strategy is go all in. And that's probably, I think, what's needed if you're serious about it.
+1.
Okay. Doug, I have to thank you for joining us. Your contribution was excellent as usual. Our conversations always are. And Andreas, thank you as well for participating in this. We're going to give everybody 5 minutes of their life back. But if you have additional questions, feel free to submit them to Crealytics, either through our website or through one of our individual LinkedIn accounts, and we'll be happy to follow up with you. Stay tuned for an announcement for our next webinar next month. The title is still being debated, but we'll have another exciting speaker, hopefully up to the same kind of quality that Andy and Doug were able to give us today. Thanks everyone for coming, and thanks again to the speakers.
Thank you. Bye.
Sure.